How many of you love sleeping? Show of hands. Don't do that on me. But I am one of those people who was blessed with that gift. So much that if I have to sleep here right now, I can. However, one day in 2017, somebody who was gifted in sleeping could not sleep. I was in the best job, worked for a big company, was just going to move to a new city. Everything was perfect. Yet I just couldn't sleep and I couldn't explain myself. I had the gift of sleep. That piece of being awake led me to ask a lot of questions. Questions like, what am I really doing with my life? Is my life really worth it? Who can I really serve? And these kind of questions kept on playing in my mind. So my wife and I, we took a brave call and said, what if we left our corporate jobs? Could there be something else we could do? Well, 6 years ago when we did that, little did we know that we'd enter into a world called the social sector. And as I started speaking to people, I discovered so many new things. One of my biggest discoveries was this, that if we really want to bring development in this world, whether it's India or anywhere in the world, it's only possible when everyone is involved. It's not the government's job. It's not an NGO's job. It's not students. It has to involve everyone. And the more I looked at the ecosystem, I saw people working. Okay, I saw NGOs doing their part. I saw the government doing their part. But there could still be a lot to be done where everyone can work together. So what I saw in my mind was, what if we could bridge, between needs and talent? So my personal journey as a professional was in HR, right? And I had seen the power of HR in some sense, saying, what if you could see the talent that is around you? I was thinking, what if we could connect people, talented people in corporates, to projects in rural India? And that led me actually to visit Mumbai on a stopover flight, met this man called Biju, and Biju was like, Sam, great idea, you want to take people to rural India, but why rural India? Why don't you do it with urban India? I was like, I had been to Mumbai a lot on assignments, but I had never seen what he was describing. He was describing something called the urban poor. And I had been on short stints so many times to Mumbai and never seen a slum community. But what began there was an inquisitiveness to find out, can I make a difference? If I can, what difference can I make? So one of the things that started in our discovery was, let's first remove all the barriers that stop people from getting involved. Because I said, right, everyone has to get involved. So what are these barriers that stop people from getting involved? Typically people think it's time, it's interest, but it's a little bit more than that. And what I discovered was, one of the first things is that you really need options. And when I say options, it's not just volunteering as a teacher. A lot of times we have seen, hey, come and volunteer as a teacher. No, it's not just that. There are so many other opportunities. Like we talked about digital before. You could be a social media manager, you could be a model for a anti-trafficking, non-profit working with survivors products, a whole range of things. And we wanted to understand what those options were. In doing that, I said, okay, it's not just options, showing people options, we also have to give people flexibility. Because not everybody can actually walk into a shelter home, right? Because you have good intent, but it's not easy, right? And we felt, hey, what if we could actually enable people who really want to serve with flexible options? They could work from home. Well, that's what COVID showed us. During times of COVID, I had never had the permission to go into a shelter home. But during COVID, we had shelter homes open for us saying, please send us resources. Please send us professionals who can do online curriculum for us. And we found out, wow, this could be an option. We could have mental health professionals, we could have artists, dance therapists, a whole range of people getting involved if it was flexible. Last but not the least, an element of safety. Now why I'm saying safety is, yes, physical safety is important, but as people, we shy away from opportunities because we don't know if we'll be treated okay, or we have self-doubt. There are times when I have had people coming in, volunteers coming in, joining us for surveys, thinking, yeah, this is going to be really simple, and two of them walk into a slum community. The first house they go to, they return back saying, I can't do this, because suddenly they realize that they don't have words to connect with somebody from a slum community. They're definitely going to ask you, hey, I have to go and get water right now. Is this really important? Or who are you? And suddenly you don't have words. For confident volunteers in a different space, they found themselves in the slum community not being able to connect easily. And we said, what if we could create a safe environment for them? So we started teaching them, hey, there are cue words you can use. For example, in this specific slum community, we said, all you have to say is, 5 years ago, there was a yellow bus that used to come here. Do you remember the yellow bus? And interestingly, that worked as a connecting point to that slum community, because everybody remembered a yellow bus that would come every day into the slum community, have kids come into that bus, feed them and teach them on that bus. So it was only about finding what were those connecting pieces to bring safety to our volunteers. So I said, okay, that's great. It's good that you know options, you have flexibility, you have safety, but it's also important, if you really want to create serving societies, it's also important that you know what are high impact opportunities. And trust me, a lot of times high impact opportunities are not really high. It's not so big, they're really small things. And seemingly simple as well. And in the next few minutes, I want to just show you a few of those. Walk for Freedom. This is started by an organization called 821, a global non-profit working towards preventing human trafficking through large-scale awareness. What is it? Walk. Simple? Yes? Anybody can do it? I've had mothers in strollers to senior citizens join us for this. But very significant about it is not that it's another walk. It's a walk with a difference. It's a walk which is a single file walk. It's a silent walk, and everybody holds information or awareness cards like this lady right here, spreading awareness about human trafficking that is happening in the city and in the world. Well, you might think, well, what happens next? Well, the more you do it, the more awareness builds. Well, what happens if you have more awareness? And what you and I need to realize is one of the biggest things that happen is that helplines get a push. Now, I don't know how many of you know the child line number. Can anybody tell me what the child line number here?
109.
1098, yes? Now what we do is that we go and convey these messages. Hey, if you see a child in distress, what do you need to do? Call 1098, right? Now, as a part of doing this, as simple as a walk, we saw rescues happening. And let me tell you, some of the stories are crazy. A few weeks ago, I had a friend of ours coming in from Kolkata to share his story with us. He has been part of the Walk for Freedom since 2019. He has been a champion volunteer, he has been a PRO, somebody who actually goes in and gets permissions for us. And he also is a gifted speaker, so he was also the MC. 2019, we did a Walk for Freedom in Kolkata. 2020, we did a Walk for Freedom in our own houses. Basically, we didn't walk anywhere else. We were in our house. 2021, we didn't have a walk again. 22 and 23, that means he was part of 3 walk editions. 2023, that is few months ago, when he organized the Walk for Freedom, the very next day, he goes into his house and he hears the sound of 2 young girls chatting a little bit, at the same time carrying something seemingly heavy all the way up. And he's staying in the 9th floor. And when he opens the door and he looks out, he sees these 2 little girls carrying a bucket full of grains, and they're carrying it in the terrace. Curiosity strikes, and he asks them, hey, what's happening? No, they're just going to the terrace. So he follows them up, and he starts asking them, so where are you staying? What's happening? Very shortly, he recognizes that these children are not from this place. Trust me, this is a society in mainstream Calcutta. And he takes his phone, records them, and sends the video to the chairperson of Child Welfare Committee, who was interestingly the chief guest the previous day. He reports saying, ma'am, this is happening in my apartment. He says, thank you buddy for sharing this. In 24 hours, those 2 children were rescued. Now, I asked myself, it is not that, he didn't know about this 3 years ago. But sometimes you need to hear something again and then again. That when you see it, it becomes so obvious to you, this is not normal. This is something I need to be involved in. And that moment, he was no more an MC. He was no more a PRO. He was somebody saying, I need to rescue these kids. So it might look like a walk. It's more than a walk. And that has been my experience. It's not just one story, so many stories, so many kids. There's another story in Andhra Pradesh of children rescuing children. Can you imagine that? 15-year-olds, 14-year-olds saying that their peers are going to get forced married quickly, please help. These are real stories out of Andhra Pradesh, rural villages. But what are we really doing? Oh, it just looks like a walk, but it's not just a walk. So my dream is that every village should ideally have a walk for freedom. A walk which spreads awareness, brings out these opportunities where people can get involved in. And these days I've been studying and looking at what are ways to do it. Now trust me, when we started this, we were just a few of us in Bandra. We started this in Bandra in 2017. One walk, 350 people, that was it. And even now we're not a big team or anything. Let me tell you, last year, we had 107 walks covering 34,000 people and spreading awareness to close to 66 million people across India. Entirely because passionate people like you and me said, hey, this can't be happening in our watch. We need to do something about it. Another example, we're talking about high impact opportunities, another example. Another core area that we work is primary education for the urban poor. We just do 2 things. We do find ways to engage kids, find ways to sustain kids in education. So a very common role that is there is the role of a teaching assistant. Today I've seen not everybody can become a teacher, right? And not everybody can become a teacher. But trust me, everybody can become a teaching assistant, because all you're doing is probably this, or you are listening in to what is happening in the classroom, or you're helping the teacher pack or manage her class briefly, and you don't necessarily need to be a gifted teacher for that. But this is something that can really change urban slums in India. Another powerful story is from an experience during COVID. So COVID set us all apart, and what ended up happening at that time was we couldn't reach the children we were working with us in the slums. And the children were using borrowed phones from one member of the family and sharing for learning. So we asked a company, hey, you guys are spread across India, can you really help us? We want to make 500 stories in 5 languages. Interestingly, this company took it up. They said, yes, we have so many different employees in so many different languages, we will take this up. And that's exactly what they did. This was done during 2020, 4 years ago. Will you believe me if I told you that today, 4 years later, there are children in Chittoor, a small place in Andhra Pradesh, who are listening to audio stories created by a corporate employee 4 years ago because they did an outreach, they did an extension of what they could. And that is the possibility we're talking about. Your talent doesn't have to end with what you have here right now. So yes, a big part of supporting volunteers, a big part of providing safety for volunteers is also celebrating them. And that's something which we do and believe in as well. So as I close, I want to ask you this question. How can you build serving societies? What can you really do? Remember I was telling you about Biju, whom I had met many years ago. 20 years ago, this is 2004, he was outside Mahim station and serving vada pav to a few kids. Just 20 years ago. He was just like us, didn't know what to do, where, how, but just said, let me use what I have with me right now. Today, it's 20 years since and so much has happened. He's founded Vision Rescue, who does exactly that, and the Movement India. One of the most powerful stories of making impact is the fact that even when we don't have language, we can even do as simple things as combing a child's hair, cutting their nails, and many a times that is good enough to make a big impact. This is actually a story of a foreigner coming in, not being able to speak the language, but just doing two things, combing her hair and cutting nails, and that being good enough to reach out to a child. Today, as I close, I want to ask you a simple question. What do you have with you? It could be your talent, it could be your time, but if you give your time and talent, that's more than enough. And I want to wish you all the best and let us impact many more lives. Thank you.